Finding peace of mind can be a really tough job, particularly if you've suffered from some sort of trauma.
For sure. And Lori Heusinger from Alpha Omega Therapeutics is here to talk about ways to help comfort yourself. It's actually a method that Lori used and invented called toggling. And you are here to explain what toggling is. And we got a little education on it, and it's so interesting. So share with our viewers what it means.
Okay, well, toggling is an understanding that the emotional system works in frequencies. You know, different emotions are happening at different frequencies, but also that the emotional system has a polarity characteristic, which means that a specific stress can be reversed and produce a specific comfort. And so what toggling is understanding that and isolating the stress, focusing on it mentally and creating a shift so that you're not only releasing the negative, but actually producing a positive to replace it. And we call that a toggle because it literally acts like a little toggle switch in the mind.
Like a switch.
And you were talking to us earlier, and you said that there are pains in certain parts of the body that relate to certain stresses. And, and that's what you're working with.
Exactly. What the other thing that we realized is there's three things that we do with our stress. We either express it, or we suppress it, we talk ourselves out of it, or we can transform it. But when we look at the suppression model, which we have up on the screen, some of the animation is not really available here on your screen, but the stress will either happen in the mind, or when you talk yourself out of it, it literally squeezes down and begins to create pressure in the body.
Now, you mentioned it's almost like a vacuum once you channel that emotion that you're feeling and you want to change the energy.
If you want to change it, producing the actual toggle is first you have to activate the negative emotion. You don't want to hold it in the body, you have to activate it. So you think about things that cause you problems, bring up the stress, focus on the feeling of that emotion, fear or anger, then you literally draw it into the center of your mind. You're pulling it in, which is what we teach you how to do, and it flips it to the positive.
So if there's just, like you were telling us earlier, like with anger, if there's like a certain thing or a certain person, you think about that thing. And then all of a sudden you can feel the anger in your body, and then that's what you focus on.
And you're saying don't suppress that. Don't suppress that feeling.
You know, if you suppress it, you are better able to function mentally for a while, but in the long run you're creating a pressure grid in the body that actually exacerbates a lot of physical complaints.
Okay, and now we're seeing this emotional energy fuel source. What is that we're looking at right now?
Well, again, some of the animation is not available on your screen, but what we're showing is that the emotional system really responds like a closed system. And when it's in its positive, it's more in this lavender, is what I show when I give my classes. But if you can imagine some of those squares flipping to a negative, when we program ourselves to actually experience stress, not only are we experiencing stress, but we're losing some of the positive. And so you get this polarity. When you reboot it back to the positive, you lose the stress and regain the positive function. So
you almost want to think of yourself like a computer.
You know, actually it works in a lot of ways very similar to the way that we have, you know, we program computers.
And we have to
Yeah, and you're actually training personal responders to use this kind of technique. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, actually people with PTSD and with the who are in jobs that have a high propensity for PTSD can learn this technique. You're literally learning how to master your own emotional system. So a lot of veterans programs are beginning to look at this. Drug rehab programs are looking at this technique so that people can go in, activate those stresses rather than trying to talk themselves out of it, and then reboot the system so that their mind and their body become much more clear and highly functioning.
Now, do you find that women tend to more than men suppress like their feelings about things? Because I know I feel like a lot of times I will take things if it aggravates me,
and you hold on to it.
And you hang on to it because you don't want to have
conflict. You want to avoid
conflict. And I feel like it's something that a lot of
you know, I can say that maybe women tend to suppress some things more so than men, but the suppression ability is very strong in men as well. They suppress a lot of fear issues, whereas women will suppress more anger issues.
Gotcha.
Well, a lot of what you're talking about really is going to help us calm ourselves and soothe ourselves, and I would imagine that you would say the first step is just being aware of those emotions, correct?
Yes, actually the book that I have written is very nice and actually walking you through the steps of understanding how the emotional system gets programmed in the negative, how to access it and start reprogramming it. Not that it will never go back to the negative, but if it does, that you have this mastery, ability to just move it back into the positive. And also knowing what health problems you have and how they're related to very specific emotions that have been suppressed in the system.
Right, because you were saying sometimes you'll get a pain in your left shoulder, and you were saying there's different parts of your body. It means different things.
Yes. Generally, deep shoulder pains have to do with anxiety when we're getting ready to go into action and we're a little tense about it, whereas low back pain has a lot more to do with bitterness and resentment that's being held.
Okay.
So there's different emotions that will pop up in the body if
Even
they're
from
suppressed.
the left to the right, you said.
Even from the left to the right, yes. One side tends to be more anger related. The other side shows more of a fear suppression going on.
So interesting. Well, okay, so real quickly, what would be the first sign? So if somebody out there is watching and they're thinking, oh, I really need to toggle.
Well, there's a few signs. Number one, if you know you're absolutely stressed out, you're afraid, you're angry, you're irritable, you're depressed, well, that's a sign.
Sure.
The other is if you know you have a very hard time making decisions, you have a hard time getting a quiet mind. These are cognitive indicators that you're stressed out.
Okay.
And then if you have chronic aches and pains and they can't identify where it's coming from, even health problems, those indicate that there is some components of the emotional system that could be adjusted to improve it. So
great to know.
Mind, body, spirit.
Yeah, it's like mind over matter almost.
It sure is.
Exactly that. And
you know, when people say, oh, if you just, you have the power, it's your own mind, you have the power to change your thoughts and you have the power to change how you feel about something, and you don't realize that you can. You really can.
You really can. Most of the time when we say that, we're talking about talking ourselves out of the stress, which suppresses it.
Right.
And then it goes into the body. We have pain. We can maintain that for a couple weeks, and then we blow up because it was actually hard to keep that pressure going. So this is a new technique that gives you a third option.
So it's toggling. It's the newest thing. We need to toggle.
Yes.
Let's do it.
Toggle on.
And of course, you can get information on toggling and all of Lori's information. Check out the screen right now.
Yes, at Alpha Omega Therapeutics, 3500 Comanche. Also, our web address is www.toggkeit.com. I teach classes, there's books, there's free audio downloads. So there's a lot of information to teach you how to do the technique.
Oh, that's fantastic. We'll be doing it. We're working on it.
Great.
I like it. Thank you for the information. Thank you for the advice, and I'm sure our viewers are thanking you as well. And we're back with more after the break.